the stream did randomly crash on me there, but unfortunately the only move that we really missed was the move for the lead of the race, as Bambino does manage to make the overtake and has gotten past Steba, and looks like he's taking the lead of the race. We can see Dax is still currently in P5, holding out, trying to bide his time so he can make the most of the opportunity that presents itself. Obviously, we have to consider into the fact that it's lap 3 of 28. DRS, of course, is now enabled. We have those extremely long straights out in China. So it'll be interesting to see how drivers can combat each other and try to get past each other. Obviously, DRS trains are not going to assist you out at all in a situation like this. And that is the wrong stream I've opened up, unfortunately. But yes, we are back now. Now we can see Dax absolutely pushing Alu along, and he doesn't even need to necessarily get the overtake done before the DRS zone. Now with DRS wide open, Dax has most likely created quite a comfortable gap to Alu and has managed to promote himself back up into P4. It didn't seem like Alu was really fighting back on this position, realizing there wasn't much more he could do. And now keeping our eye on Steba, who's roughly 2.5 tenths down on Bambino, heading down into turn 1, lap 4 of 28. And with DRS wide open, Steba does manage to set the fastest lap time out on track with a 134.7. It looked like he was maybe looking for a potential dive bomb down the inside of Bambino, but decides to think better off it and decides to stay behind him at the current moment. Both the Alfa Romeo and the Mercedes practically pushing each other along. Yes, we're back. Apologies for the stream crashing. I'm not too sure what's up with that. But yes, Steba now getting extremely close to Bambino, practically pushing that Mercedes along. And now we can see P1 and P2 have actually begun to slowly pull away from the rest of the field. A 1.3 second gap to P3. Jack dropping down a little bit. And obviously, it's obviously he's only got more and more problems, as Dax is now slowly starting to catch up to him as he's getting into a bit of a groove now. Obviously getting past Alu in the lap prior to this. It'll be interesting if he can maybe potentially get past Jack as well. Keeping our eye on Steba, who's roughly 4 tenths down on the race leader at the moment. Grr. Welcome back. But yes, of course, 5 tenths now, the gap separating Steba and Bambino, losing a bit of time through that corner. But however, with DRS wide open, I don't think it's going to be much of a struggle as he's slowly gaining on the Mercedes. It doesn't look like it's going to be enough. Meanwhile, Dax has managed to make the move on Jack and has promoted himself up onto the bottom step of the podium. And with that, Jack has now unfortunately got Alu in his rearview mirrors to deal with. And Dax has the difficult task of catching up to P1 and P2. We have a bit of an overtake going on over here, as Samet has unfortunately lost out extremely heavily, losing out on almost 6 positions at the same time. And we can see over here that Jaguar and Zab get promoted up into P7 and P8. And here in the midfield, we can see there's plenty of action as Samet now trying to send him down the inside of Zab. It looks like he's gotten that move down perfectly, and however, Zab with the switchback around has actually managed to regain the position back on Samet. This is a great wheel-to-wheel racing between both drivers. They're still side by side heading through sector 1, and it seems like Samet, with the better traction out of that corner, manages to make that move and actually regains P8. Fantastic racing between both these drivers. You came strapped with jokes tonight for my entertainment. Thank you. I appreciate this. Fantastic racing from them, as most of our attention was near the front of the pack. We basically ignored the fact that there was some fantastic racing going on in the midfield area of this track. And we can see over here Will the Game and Bang Average Seb now. Bang Average Seb obviously would have liked to be fighting near the front of the grid with his teammate, but unfortunately he's going to have to make the most of the situation that he's in at the moment. P11 fighting for the final points position. The gap is roughly 3 tenths between him and P10 at the moment, and now with DRS wide open, which it's a bit scary right now considering there's still overcast conditions, so I'm not too sure if rain could still come into an effect here, but obviously drivers were saying that it's a fully dry race, and we can see Bang Average Seb now coming into a battle with Said, as Said in the Alpine manages to send it down the inside and makes a fantastic overtake with his medium tires and promotes himself up into P11. Things just getting worse and worse for Dax's Ferrari teammate, but however, he's not going to give up completely just as yet. DRS wide open, we can see Said, he's just losing out so much time in the straight line. As we can see, Bang Average Seb must have most likely put more effort into keeping a higher downforce setup, and we can see that with how much time he's losing out on the straights at the moment. Bringing our attention near the front of the grid, we can see Steva still roughly hovering around the same margins he was with Bambino as the start of the race, roughly 4/10 separating P1 and P2 at the moment. It crashed, so you can riz me? Yeah, unfortunately not. With Steva now 5/10 separating P2 and P1. First 6 laps out of the way, no safety car and no significant incidents that I've noticed out on track either. So obviously we have Wells, who's unfortunately dropped quite far back from the rest of the pack. I'm sure a safety car would greatly turn that around. Do I want to hear a joke? Yes, absolutely. If it isn't funny, then I don't even know if I can ban you from the stream, but yeah, sure. Let me hear it. It doesn't look like Steva's going to be close enough on this occasion. He keeps losing out on time through that final corner. And we have a yellow flag in Sector 3. It seems to be a Ferrari, and it is the Ferrari of Bang Average Seb, who unfortunately lost control of his car and has dropped down into P14. He's definitely not going to be happy with himself. Keeping our eye on Will the Game and Saeed. Saeed fortunately making a fantastic move for the final points position and does manage to promote himself up into P10. Great racing from Saeed as he's battling for the front, battling to the front. Why, blood? Why did it cross the road? so weird having to look at your joke and then make sure I don't miss out on any overtakes going out on track at the moment. Obviously, Steva and Bambino having that 5/10 gap between each other, but it's not necessarily the closest battle out on track at the moment. That would be between Will and Saeed. Saeed, who just managed to make the overtake and just managed to get past him. Obviously hasn't lost him just as yet because I wore the wrong socks. I'm not too sure I got that one, I'm not gonna lie. Regardless, keeping our eye on Steva now once again, lap 27 to 28, DRS wide open. Will Bambino be able to fight back? Let's take a look at Bambino's battery. He does have a considerably lower amount of battery as compared to Steva. Steva's obviously been utilizing. Well, yeah, okay, I figured that much, but Steva obviously reserving his battery usage at the moment, and with DRS wide open once again, it would be interesting to see if he can make a potential move heading down into turn 1. It doesn't look like he will be able to, but he's trying to fill up those rearview mirrors of Bambino as he's trying to force him into a mistake, and it looks like he might have just done so with that, heading down the inside, and there's a collision between both drivers. Bambino unfortunately squeezes him out, and Steva unfortunately has to concede the position and drops back down into P2. Oh, that is my brother. But of course, Steva unfortunately losing out on that position. We have another yellow flag in Sector 3. And it seemed to be Will who's come into the pits. I'm not too sure if he's retiring. It doesn't look like he is. Steva obviously with that 5/10 gap to Bambino. But this is where it's interesting for Steva. Steva usually loses the most amount of time through this corner, and there is once again doesn't look like he's confident through there, has the grip to really make as much progress as quickly as Bambino would, as he's once again lost out on roughly 2/10 through that corner alone. And it's that corner alone that's single-handedly costing him a potential lead of this race. But it could be down to the fact that Bambino just has a higher downforce setup as compared to Steva, which would explain why which would explain why Steva is able to easily catch up to Bambino as well. Steva once again with DRS wide open. He's going to try to force Bambino into going wide once again. And he has forced Bambino wide, but unfortunately a bit too far back to maybe send it down the inside again. Wouldn't want to create a recreation of the same mistake as he had earlier. Nobody is 1v1ing each other on Fortnite. Seems like Jags actually managed to get past P-Shadow and P15. So big win for that. But interestingly enough, This little battle between Steva and Bambino has actually caused Dax to become right so involved in this battle for the lead of the race, as now the battle for first place becomes a three-way race between Bambino, Steva, and Dax. Jack has unfortunately dropped down in this race. And now how will Steva respond to this? Because obviously it's another thing just trying to get past the person in front of you, but then having to defend from the driver behind you as well is a completely separate matter. As you can see, Bambino pulling off to the side of the road, trying to break that slipstream. But unfortunately, it doesn't look like it's massively helped him out here, as Steva has still considerably closed that gap to the Mercedes driver. And with DRS wide open once again, he's going to try to close that gap, trying to send it down turn one, and once again filling up those rearview mirrors of Bambino, trying to force him into some sort of mistake. And it doesn't look like he's going to really be able to capitalize on it, as there seemed to be a bit of collision between some of the drivers there, and it looked like he also got tapped from the rear end there, as Dax might have also had some sort of collision. Hopefully all drivers came away from this without any broken front wings. And by the looks of it, it seems like everything is fine. Bringing our attention down to the midfield, we can see Samet now trying to close that gap to Saeed. We saw that they have been fighting for quite a while now, and this move has been building up for a considerable amount of time. And just as I switch over to Samet, he's unfortunately lost control of his car and spins out and loses out a considerable amount of positions to Saeed, and unfortunately comes out and we'll get back into racing in P12. And interestingly enough, P1 to P11 being all medium runners. It is all medium runners now from P1 to P11, showing you, I think, and everybody else, what was clearly the better tire compound to be on at the moment. Was there a rain for a second? No, it was not. Now Steva, DRS wide open. He is closer to Bambino on this occasion. Will he potentially send it down the inside? No, he will not. Just needs to make sure he gets a good exit out of one of these corners. DRS wide open once again. Heading down towards turn one. He's too far back on this occasion. It seems like Dax is actually starting to drop back as well. Maybe trying to reserve his batteries and save his resources to maybe go for a better push later on. Silver, probably. Yeah, better than me, 100%, sure. Regardless, it seems to be the closest battle out on track, funnily enough, is actually for the lead of the race, as all the drivers have now begun to create a bit of a gap to each other. Seems to be Bambino who has the most to deal with at the moment. So I want to keep an eye on this. So 5.5 tenths at the start of this corner, and by the end of it, as you can see, Steva nearly loses the car, and that creates a perfect opportunity for Dax to make a potential overtake for the second place on the podium position. DRS wide open once again. Dax using every inch of his battery to try to make a potential overtake. And will he send it down the inside? Of course he will. Sends it down the inside of the Alfa Romeo driver, as there seems to be a bit of collision between both drivers, and they're still side by side with each other. Steva seems to be getting the better traction out of that corner, and unfortunately for Dax, it looks like Steva is going to be able to maintain that position and stay in P2. Meanwhile, Bambino has gone extremely wide off the track, but luckily for him, he's a bit far ahead he's a bit too far ahead for any potential overtakes from Steva from behind him. However, interestingly enough, it is that corner that is costing Steva extremely dearly, and that nearly costed him a potential position loss over there. But now we're right back to where we started. Switch players are real? Yes, absolutely. I was as surprised as you were. Actually, never mind. It seems like Blurry Julio has actually retired from this race, and we have the first virtual safety car of this race. So obviously under virtual safety car conditions, drivers will not be allowed to overtake each other, and they have a certain pace they have to maintain throughout the lap. And obviously once the green flags are waving, then drivers will be able to go. But with lap 12 of 28, what will this mean for potential pit stops? Who is going to be going into the pits and making a potential stop over here, as race control has given Wells a 3-second time penalty, unfortunately, for multiple warnings. Definitely not going to be happy with that. Now, what will your race leader do? Lap 12 of 28. Oh, as there's been a massive collision there from behind him. Bambino, Dax, and Steva involving all three drivers, and they all have gotten a drive-through penalty under the virtual safety car conditions. What has happened there? It seemed to be Bambino braked extremely late there, trying to slow his car down massively so he could meet the times, and unfortunately Dax and Steva could just not react. Steva now forcibly having to come into the pits to switch off of that front wing, but of course this is not going to clear up his drive-through penalty. What has happened there? Has Steva actually managed to get away from this without a single penalty? No, he has not. So very interestingly enough, P1 and P3 all have gotten drive-through penalties because of an incident. Oh boy. We're obviously green flags once again. We're back under racing conditions. Unfortunately, it seems to be Steva, who was in P2, has dropped down all the way into P10 after he had to forcibly make an early pit stop change to change his front wing. Meanwhile, Dax is now currently in P2, and that promotes Jack up into P3. Somehow or the other, Jack always finds a way to end up on the podium. It happened last race as well, and now it's happening this race as well. Fantastic. I'm happy for him. Someone put him on a team. And now we can see Dax with the DRS wide open. Yes, indeed. Closing that gap to Bambino. Obviously, Bambino had to make the time, but unfortunately, that extremely hard braking has cost him dearly, as once again they're coming in a collision with each other. Dax and Bambino. It seems like Dax is just unable to slow his car down enough, as both drivers, as Dax has decided to head into the pits to serve his drive-through penalty by the looks of it. Bambino deciding to stay out for just a bit longer will stay your race leader at the moment. Just going to make sure, yep, it doesn't look like the Ferrari pit crew are out in the pit lane at the moment, so it looks like Dax will just be simply serving his drive-through penalty. But where does this mean for Steva? Will Steva be able to come out ahead of, I guess it doesn't really matter at that point, does it? As Saeed has now gotten a 3-second time penalty, and now Steva coming through the pits to serve his drive-through penalty as well. Oh, interesting. There's a bunch of drivers now getting into the pits to switch off of their medium tire compounds, feeling like they've been used up to as much as they possibly could have been. We can actually see Dax had not lost out on too much time, still staying in P5. Obviously has a mountain of gap to close to Bambino, but Bambino of course does have that drive-through penalty plus his pit stop to do. He's going to have to hope and pray for some sort of safety car to at least mitigate one of those things. Keeping our eye out on track at the moment, we can see P Shadow now slowly closing the gap to Jags. This is for 7th place. And Alu, interestingly enough, getting very interested in a potential podium finish, closing the gap to Jack. A fantastic result from the Williams team so far. Both drivers currently P2 and P4 respectively, not to mention from Red Bull as well, who have drivers in P3 and P4 respectively. And now we can see Alu actually making the overtake on Bambino as Bambino heads into the pits to serve his drive-through penalty, and now Alu trying to send it around the outside of Jack, trying to force him into some sort of mistake. Jack now currently your race leader on his 14-lap-old mediums. And we'll be seeing if there will be any changes for the lead of the race. Obviously, this puts the top three who started off the race in the top three at a very heavy disadvantage, all excluding Jack, of course, who did start in P3 for the start of this race. You see Jaguar now also in the pits, along with Staba, who has now finally come in to switch off of his hard tires? Or no, he's actually come in to switch off of his 2-lap old hard tires to switch onto another set of mediums, interestingly enough. How about Alu? Currently in P2. 5/10 separating him and Jack. And we can already see that straight line speed Alu has over Jack. DRS wide open. It doesn't look like Jack's going to be able to do much. Parks his car in the middle of the track. But Alu around the outside manages to make the move stick and promotes himself up into P1. Obviously has to still go in for his pit stop, which let's take a look if he actually decides to do right now, as he's made the move done, gotten the move done. And he decides not to. Jack, however, who is currently now in P2, decides to send it into the pits and decides now's the time to go in for his pit stop, forcing DDK to unfortunately stay out. And they're not going to double stack there at Williams. Probably the more sensible thing to do. And interestingly enough, the driver to come out of that whole situation ahead of everybody else is still Dax. Dax currently still ahead of Bambino, has yet to come in for his pit stop. And we can see Bambino has now switched onto the soft tire compound for the final 12 laps of this race. How do you make a pool table lap? I have no idea. How do you make a pool table lap? Yes, Freya. Zab managing to get past Shadow as well, heading into turn 1. Great racing from him. Tickle it. Okay. It's horrible. It's terrible. Arguably the worst one I've heard yet. Regardless, keeping our eye on Saeed, who's unfortunately 2 seconds down at the moment. Jags roughly 4/10 separating him. Ooh, as it seemed like Shadow got a massive lockup there. Only 12 more laps left to go, and P1 to P3 have all yet to come in for their pit stop. So, theoretically, the gap to P1 from Jack is roughly, 19 seconds? Yeah, sure. I'll hear another one. So Jack, roughly 19 seconds off of race leader at the moment. And it seems like Alu's actually made the move, or actually gotten promoted up into first place, as DDK has now come into the pit. So Jack will obviously get past his teammate. He's easily going to get past Dax when he comes into the pits. And I'm pretty sure, considering Alu's going to be on his cold tires on the exit and everything, there's no way. Like, I'm sure Jack is probably going to get past him as well. DDK now coming out of the pits and does unfortunately come out right behind Bambino. And Bambino now managing to promote himself up into P4. Bambino is actually the one sitting perfectly in a situation like this. Granted his pace and everything, currently sitting in P4 after making his pit stop as well. As most of the drivers seem to have gone on to put on the hard tire compounds. A few drivers have actually opted to put on the softs to make it to the end. My neighbor was mad at his wife for sunbathing in his backyard. I'm on the fence. Okay. It's a horrible joke. Steve was setting the quickest lap time of the session with a 1:34.5, I believe it was. And with that, gaps have gone up exponentially between drivers. Alu currently sitting 7 seconds ahead of P2. Saeed, interestingly enough, roughly 2.5 tenths behind Jags, and Jim even closer to Saeed behind that. So why not watch the battle for currently P8? Now Saeed with DRS wide open and heading through sector 3, will be looking to promote himself up into P8, but obviously it's not that easy. Jim now closing the gap, and we can see Jags is just basically a sitting duck there, as both drivers with their DRSs wide open managed to make the move stick. It doesn't seem like Jim's going to be able to make the overtake, and it seems like Jack has made the move and has promoted himself up into P1. Bambino coming out in P2. Alu exiting the pits in P3. So I knew Alu would definitely lose out the position to Jack, but I did not expect that he would maybe lose out the position to Bambino as well. Why does Dr. Pepper come in a can? Because it can. Okay. Alright, bro. Dax now. Trying to close that gap, trying to regain those lost positions. Obviously, has he not served his penalty yet? No, he has. That's a 5-second penalty on Dax. Things going from bad to worse for your championship leader at the current moment. He does manage to promote himself up into P5. A fantastic move from him, though. Of course, now he has a considerable mountain to climb. You've heard me say worse. Alright, bro. I don't know what you're talking about. I'm a funny person. I make funny jokes. Meanwhile, Jim, 2/10 separating him and Saeed. And heading down towards Sector 3. Obviously, it doesn't look like Saeed's really going to have much of a fighting chance from this. Unless he plans on using most of his battery. And it looks like he has plenty of battery to use. As he's actually using some right now. To create a bit of a buffer to Jim. So obviously that gap being 4.5 tenths. DRS once again wide open. And we can see Jim slowly trying to catch up to Saeed. But it doesn't look like it's going to be enough. He's going to have to stay in P9 at the moment. And let Saeed stay in P8. Excuse me, assuming that he can get how about another joke, Murray? Yes, of course, Crofty, let me hear it. DRS wide open once again. Jim now heading down towards turn 1. It seems like Saeed is not going to actually be fighting this position. It seems like Jim's going to be having to send it down the inside of Saeed. And a fantastic move that was. Saeed trying to get the switch back. But unfortunately for him, Jim covers that off perfectly. And manages to promote himself up into P8. Great racing from him to promote himself up into P8. And Samet has unfortunately retired from the session out on track. And we have a full-fledged safety car in lap 19 of 28. Very, very interesting now. So P1 to P5, all currently still using the soft tire compound. Under safety car conditions, the race leader will obviously have to stay behind the safety car. There's no overtaking each other or the safety car. And again, after like 2 or 3 laps, once the pack has all caught up to each other, we should be going under racing once again. But what does this mean for our drivers? Obviously, top P1 to P5 on the soft tire compounds. Roughly 9 more laps left to go in the session. What will Jack decide to do? It's all up to you to make the shot call. What are you going to do? It doesn't look like it. Actually, it is. Jack has now decided to go into the pits and has taken the shot and has taken the risk. He has decided that he is going to be going into the pits, and Bambino is going to be following right after him. Alu deciding to stay out on his 1-lap-old softs is going to take the risk. DDK coming into the pits. And what about Dax? What will Dax do? Dax, of course, coming into the pits to maybe get rid of his potential penalty, as Alu now comes out in the lead of this race. Jack most likely going to come out in P2 by the looks of it. Jaguar also coming into the pits to switch off of his hard tires. And it seems to be most of these drivers are all switching on to the soft tire compound. So it's basically a full-fledged sprint race up until the end. 8 laps of non-stop action. Hopefully we can get through it unscathed and most of the drivers can get away from it without having to retire. But if you're just joining us with only 8 laps left to go in the session, currently Alu is leading this race on his 2-lap-old softs. We are under safety car conditions. Jack currently sitting in P2, Bambino in P3, DDK in P4, and Jaguar in P5. Obviously we got Dax, Sab, Jim, Saeed, and Jags, and from P5 to P10 respectively. And with only a few laps under safety car conditions, they're going to wait for the rest of the grid to catch up. Everyone should pit. Yeah, it looks like everyone has, other than Will. Will being the only driver other than Alu, but Alu only having 2-lap-old softs. It's fine. It's if you can't think of any jokes. We actually got an entertaining race on our hands. I'm surprised Will didn't come into pit. He should have done so, but unfortunately, doesn't Stava. His race is just going from bad to worse. Currently at P16 after fighting for what was going to be the lead of the race. And now as we spectate Alu, he's going to obviously be following the safety car. If someone stays out, I'm gonna beat them with a hammer. Literally everyone needs to come in. Yeah. Unfortunately, Will is gonna be the receiving end. Gonna be at the receiving end of that beating. So. But as we slowly wait for the drivers to catch up, they're obviously gonna let the entire grid bunch up together, and then we should be getting the next. We should be going under racing very, very soon once again. I guess this is a good chance to take a look at their penalties. So Saeed currently sitting on a 3-second penalty. We have Shadow who has to still yet serve a drive-through penalty as Bambino gets overtaken by DDK. I'm not too sure what happened there. And now Bambino trying to get that overtake back on DDK. Not too sure what's happening here. It looks like that is exactly what happened. DDK unfortunately did lose out on the position to the Mercedes, and now it just seems like Bambino and DDK are just switching positions back and forth. I'm not too sure what's going on between these two. And it looks like Bambino is just going to be sticking out in P3 at the moment. Jack gapped Alu by 9 seconds and 2 laps before. Steva can pick up good points still. Bambino and Daxley podium, probably Jack P3. Interesting predictions coming in. So obviously through the safety car, we're going to be riding on board with Alu as they're coming through. They're coming through sector 3 at the moment. It doesn't look like the safety car is going to be coming in at the end of this lap unless it's a very, very late call. Not even going to begin to try to understand what's being said over there. Yeah, unless it's an extremely late call from race control, I doubt the safety car is going to be coming in at the end of this lap. So we have at least one more lap behind the safety car, and then we should be going under racing very, very soon. Is that Steva who's gone into the pits? It is Steva who's gone into the pits. Oh, don't tell me, Steva, you're giving up. Don't retire from this race, mate. Don't do it. Come on. It doesn't look like he's retiring. He's just switching on to another set of soft tires. Okay, fair enough. I know what one of those words mean. That's the only word I know in... is that Swedish, I think? Yes. Yeah, I'm not gonna say that. But yes, race control has given us the update that the safety car is coming in at the end of this lap. So we will be riding on board with Alu, whose job it will be to bunch up the rest of the grid as he weaves left and right to warm up his tires and potentially catch Jack a bit off guard here. Obviously, he has the entirety of that DRS straight left to go. He's going to be weaving left and right for the entirety of it, so he can warm up his tires as much as possible. Riding on board with Jack at the moment, see what he sees from his perspective. Obviously not weaving left or right, staying very calm and trying to keep that distance to Alu so he can catch him a bit off guard here. And when will Alu decide to go? That is the big question. This is the view from the front, from the back of the grid. It seems like all the drivers bunching up, trying to find any sort of position they can to gain